good afternoon, and we are back to Insights, a talk show by Grailmaker Innovations. And today I'm very happy because the topic today is art talks. And I'm Aishwarya, and our guest today is also Aishwarya. So, our show's name is Art Talk with Aishwaryas. So, I welcome Aishwarya here. Hi, Aishwarya.
Hi, Aishwarya.
That
Now
sounds
the
so
weirdness
odd.
starts.
So I just want to give you a background of us as Aishwaryas. So both of us have vision impairment, and both of us are artists who do artwork. So in the community, people usually get confused. So when Aishwarya, the other Aishwarya, goes and meets, she is in some conferences, people mistake her to be me, and the same thing happens with me. They think I'm the other Aishwarya. So that is the confusion all about. And we thought, why not we use this opportunity, have a talk show with Aishwaryas, and tell about us and the accessible art that we do. And I'm so happy that you are here, Aishwarya. It's a pleasure because there are very few people with a visual impairment who actually do pursue art as a hobby or passion. So, what's your take on that? I mean, tell me about yourself, what you do, and how did you get into artwork?
um, so as Aishwarya already introduced me, I'm also Aishwarya, and I am currently doing my PhD at IIIT Bangalore, where I focus on assistive technology for children with disabilities, specifically children who are blind. Um, it was actually when I was working, before my PhD, when I was working in an NGO called Vision Empower. That's when I started seriously looking at art as something I should be looking at. Um, at first, it was only because Vision Empower works with children who are blind. So my focus when I was looking at art and pictures was on, okay, how do I take this to the children?
Mm,
It is still on my focus is still on how do I take this to the children? How do I help children create their own art and all that? But somewhere along the line, when I started, if I have to take it to children, I have to sort of experiment, um, try out some things. When I started trying out things, that's when I realized, oh, I like to do this too. This is interesting. And I should actually create things. Sometimes it was a conscious decision to create things. Sometimes it wasn't. It was just, to be something I like. And that's how, Aishwarya as an artist was sort of born. But then, I don't know, even now, especially in the beginning, but even now, there's a little of imposter syndrome. I don't usually use the word artist when I talk about myself, although now I have slowly started, consciously using that because, hey, just because the art I do is very different doesn't mean that I'm not an artist. And
mm,
slowly I've started appropriating that label. But there's a
mm.
whole lot of imposter syndrome in the sense that, for a long time when people introduced me as an artist, also I'll be like, oh no, I'm not really an artist. I just, make some pictures. So yeah, that's how my journey started.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that story. Tell us about the different artworks you do. I mean, I remember on an initial call, you were telling about the doodling, and then I met you in Kerala, and then you told me that you made an artwork of Rapunzel. So tell us all about your artworks, what you do, Aishwarya.
So I I'm also like a very experimental person by take makeup, I suppose. And so I like to experiment with things. In the beginning, when I started creating art, I didn't really know what tools to use, how to start, and all that. So
Mm.
my first few artworks were like, um, have you seen those geometry kits that children use in
Oh yeah, yeah,
schools?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
have
yeah. Yeah.
so they have like this plastic kind of paper, which is actually called parchment sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And it is on that they sort of drag a stylus along it. And if you put a rubber sheet behind the sheet of plastic that you're drawing on, you get an embossed picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to use that initially. I use it a little bit for sketching, for trying out something, for like trying out the placement of things in the foreground of my picture,
Okay.
for things like that. Um, yeah, so that was the first ever art that I did. And I will definitely share, pictures and descriptions. Uh, the first ever art that I did was all on these. And then slowly I started experimenting with other tools, other mediums. Um, you told me about how you do your artwork on, using aluminum foil.
Yes,
So I
yeah.
started incorporating some of that into my
Mm-hmm.
artwork. Sometimes I did that. If something was particularly suiting the aluminum foil way, I tried doing that. If there was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of writing involved, I like to write, and I like words to be a part of my artwork.
Wow.
So, like, if I'm doing something for International Day of Persons with Disabilities and I need to write stuff, so in those cases, I'd use a 3D printing pen, which is
Mm-hmm.
not as complicated as it sounds. It's like a toy-like thing that you get on Amazon, which takes in plastic filament and melts it inside the pen and sort of outputs it in whatever shape or whatever color you draw.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really cool. When it dries up, it's very tactile and um, very tactile and 3D and very touchable. Um, the the it isn't very I can't make different textures with it. Everything made with a 3D printing pen is plasticky. So then
Okay,
I started
okay.
using different textures. Primarily by then I was also working in school and trying some of this out with children. And they loved texture. I, I loved. So I turned to all these craft material, to where craft stores got material. If I Now I use multiple type material in my artwork. And the Rapunzel that I told you about, and
Yeah.
all the artwork. One of my artwork was also displayed as a part of an exhibition by Atypical Advantage,
Mm-hmm.
an art exhibition specifically featuring artists with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there in Karnataka Chitrakala Parishad, the artwork that I gave there was highly textured. So that was an artwork of a woman, um, she has like, it was very symbolic in some sense. She had like four hands, and I had put different things in her four hands, symbolizing different aspects of her personality, I suppose. And she was wearing a
Mm-hmm.
gown. So I textured everything in the sense that the gown was, satin cloth, and
Mm-hmm.
the buttons on the gown were real buttons. And
Mm-hmm.
so the hair on her head, well, it wasn't real hair, but it was thread, which was
Mm-hmm.
which was close enough. It was a kind of thread that was that felt like hair. It was soft and silky and felt like hair. So
Hmm.
I like to use a lot of texture in my artwork. And
Hmm.
yeah, that is what I do currently. Now I use a lot of based on what I want to do, what I want to represent, I use different techniques, different tools to create my
Hmm.
art. How is it different from
Beautiful.
yours?
See, I have very specific way, like, I just initially when I started, the reason I began doing accessible art is I gave up artwork when I acquired visual impairment.
Hmm.
Before that, I used to be, I used to do a lot of pencil sketching. If you found in a classroom, if you find a kid looking out of the window and scribbling something on the book, yes, that's me. So I used to do a lot of pencil sketching, but once I acquired my visual impairment, I kind of gave it up. I thought, okay, it used to hurt me, like, oh, I cannot touch artwork anymore. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't get into the topic of art because it used to hurt. But in 2018, after 10 years, I went to an art gallery, and although I was described all those paintings there, I could not experience it. That's where it pinched me. I was like, oh my God, there is such, this, it's a huge world, but it's not accessible to
Hmm.
people who have visual impairment. And that's when I thought of doing artwork. So I began using, simple household material like leaves, beads,
Hmm.
paper, ice cream sticks. So, but then the limitation what I had is I cannot shape them into anything I want. Like if I had to take
Right.
an ice cream stick, it had to be something horizontal or vertical, or that's it. And leaves, I
Right.
cannot do much with that. Beads also, it's like okay. But then I wanted to do something where I can start shaping things.
Hmm.
And so one day I have very fidgety fingers, Aishwarya. So
So
I
do I.
was
So do I.
playing
I
with
think it's a blindness thing.
so I was playing with aluminum foil after I ate some yummylicious meal. I was playing with aluminum foil. There was a lot of it, and I ended up making a dolphin unconsciously. Like I was not
Hmm.
conscious that I am doing something, and I shaped it in like a dolphin. And then I was like,
Right.
oh wow, I could do this. And the best part is it is light in weight, unlike clay, which
Hmm.
gets heavier. And I could
Yes.
reshape it in any way I want to. Although I make mistakes, I can remove everything. Then again, I can wrap it together. That is
Hmm.
when I thought, I should do something with that. So aluminum foil is my primary material. So I shape
Right.
it into like it can be sun, a tree, a lady on a swing, or
Hmm.
I'm a
I
crazy,
have seen
crazy
your lady
Harry
on a
Potter
swing.
fan. So I'm a crazy Harry Potter fan. So I have
So am
made
I.
oh God, we have so many things in common. So I made paintings like Platform 9 3/4, where the Hogwarts Express, the smoke coming out of the funnel, the beautiful engine, and Harry Potter on his, he's coming down onto the platform in his trolley, and Hedwig is in the cage, and everything is tactual. Even the cage and Hedwig inside the cage. And one more Harry
Hmm.
Potter thing is what I created is the Whomping Willow.
You created the
Uh,
Momping Willow. I remember
yeah,
that.
Whomp.
Because
So
I've always
I
wanted to, I was like, oh, so when you had put up a description of it, I was just like, oh, so what makes this because you can't, the main point of the Whomping Willow in the movies and the books was to show how it hit people, right? It moved.
yeah.
But you can't really sh show movement in artwork. So what makes the Whomping Willow different from any other trees? I think I showed your picture to my my sister-in-law, and asked her that. And she
Uh-huh.
took a while to explain why, like, what looks different about it.
Ah, I didn't know this. So Yeah, I mean, it says, and one after the other, when you start creating things, Aishwarya, like I remember, I think I would have created like around 28 3D paintings so far. The initial paintings were quite simple. I wouldn't experiment with colors, but now I've gotten used to it so much that I use colors. I do dry brush. I mean, there was a time when I thought, like, I mean, I accidentally picked up green for blue, and I ended up painting the sky green. So, but it doesn't matter, it's just an artwork and it happens. And then, of course, space felt helps me label things now. So I use the app and the QR label, I put it on my art colors, and then I say this is dark red and I can use it for this is light red, I can use it for this. So that helps me identify colors. I organize colors that way. But of course, once the aluminum foil stage is done, then on top of that I layer paper, and then I do the coloring. So usually coloring I do double coat, just because I don't miss out any gaps.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I have to interact with two colors, let's say if I am doing a girl who's wearing a red color top and a white color skirt, I would use masking tape to cover the blouse area, and
Right.
then color the skirt area. So that makes it easy for me, and it has been great. Like, I came from, I did paintings, all these 3D paintings. Then I went into even making emoji faces, because
Mm.
in our phones it usually says, the screen reader, it says, okay, tongue out face and winky face, but what exactly they are, not many know about it. So there was a time when I had to meet my visually impaired friends, and I thought, what better present than handmade emoji faces for each of them, describing their character. So there was a
Aw.
friend who does a lot of drama, so it was that drama type face. There was a friend who's a love guru, so it was like, hearts for eyes, that sort of an
Mm.
emoji. And later then I got into educational stuff as well, like making 3D models, like the human heart, the pyramid, and the Titanic ship. So for me, it while doing the art, it lets me forget everything else. And I don't mind messing my hands, messing my clothes. So most of my clothes are colored. So I'm like, yeah, I'm an artist, so obviously it should be colored. So I have a question for you, Aishwarya. So, how do people, when people, of course, they are congenitally blind, and some, are late, they have acquired vision impairment later in their
Mm.
life. So, when they experience your artwork, what are their comments? I am very curious to know, like, what do they say?
Um, so well, late blind people are more used to pictures. They're used to
Hmm.
seeing pictures. They don't need a lot of explanation to translate those pictures into 3D.
Hmm.
And so they are able to easily identify things. I feel like one of the reasons why congenitally blind people struggle uh, is because so we take color out of the equation because congenitally blind people haven't seen color. They might have some understanding of color depending on their exposure. They will probably and hopefully most definitely know that the sea is blue and the sky is blue usually, but
Hmm.
nuances of color perhaps not.
Hmm.
So when we take color out of the equation, most likely the what we have left to identify an artwork, to understand what it is shape,
Hmm.
and perhaps
Texture.
the size.
Hmm.
That's it. Yeah, so when we add texture to it,
Hmm.
I feel like that's what helps congenitally blind people a lot
Hmm.
in understanding. I mean, texture coupled with the shape of things
Mm, mm,
is why is how congenitally blind people are able to understand artwork.
Mm,
And it also depends on what artwork.
mm,
I mean, I made a painting of a sea, or more accurately, a woman walking on the beach towards the water. But it is very abstract for a congenitally blind person. It is very abstract for me. When I was making it itself, it was very abstract for me. Uh, in the sense that blind people have experienced the sea, but congenitally blind people have most likely not seen the sea. They don't know what
mm,
waves look like. They
mm,
don't know what, how waves are drawn, or things like that. So I have often found that congenitally blind people like to, when it comes to making and also experiencing, like to make and experience things um, that they have experienced, that they have touched. Other things they like, but those are novelties. They're
mm,
not like, they're not going to touch it and be like, oh, this is the sea. I get it totally. I will
mm,
explain for 15 minutes about this is the sea and these are the waves and this is how it looks. And, this is why I made it this way. And then they'll be like, oh, okay. But
mm,
if I give them
mm,
something very, very tangible, very experiential, things that they have touched and felt around them, like my, you know, like my atypical art, atypical advantage art exhibition
the
painting,
display, yeah.
which was of a person. A human
Mm,
body is something that everybody has felt. And,
mm,
I had the girl wearing a flared, wide flared gown.
mm, mm,
Especially all the congenitally blind women who came to that exhibition were definitely able to mostly get it. They're
mm,
like,
mm,
oh, these are the frills. I get it. So because these are things that they've all experienced in their life.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
Actually, it's kind of, I was actually thinking about this when you were speaking about color. Um, Color doesn't form a huge part of my art practice. Um,
mm. You had mentioned that, yeah.
yeah, it's actually nice to see, even among the two of us, with you being late blind and me being congenitally blind, how things change, right?
Mm, mm,
Uh, for me, color is there. It is unavoidable, in the sense that if not if not the clay or the aluminum foil I use, if even if they can be considered neutral colors. So yeah, it's actually very interesting to see how, like earlier you were talking about color, and it's interesting to see how color differs even across the two of us. In
mm,
our art practice, we use color in different ways, or to different extents, because, partly because you're late blind and I'm congenitally blind. So for me, I don't engage with color a lot in my artwork. To some extent, it is inescapable, unavoidable, because um, the even though I might want to keep things colorless, relatively color neutral, um, the materials that I use have color. Uh, if Even if my clay can be just black and white, or even if the aluminum foil can be just silver or whatever, um,
mm,
what I put for textures has its own color. Like the gown, the satin cloth that I put on my artwork of a person, of a woman, has a color of its own. So then I
mm,
have to think about, okay, what color satin gown? So to that extent, I definitely do engage with color in my art, but I don't do a lot of complex shading, getting things the right color. I don't do a lot of that. I just do a basic, this is blue, this is green,
Mm.
maximum light blue, dark blue, light green, dark green. That's like my maximum.
Mm.
um Sometimes I ask for sighted help on, what color something should be like, what color should I use. I use a very basic 12 color acrylic
Okay.
paint box, and beyond that I use a couple of colors. One is flesh tint,
Mm-hmm.
um sometimes yellow ochre, because flesh tint is very, I only after I used it a couple of times I realized, someone asked me, why do you only draw white people in your artwork? And that's when I realized, oh, I'm drawing white people in my artwork. I did not know this. Because I was like, hey, flesh tint is
Uh-huh.
flesh tint. So then I had deep, dark conversations with people and with AI about what color I can use to depict Indian flesh tint. And then
Mm.
people suggested some form of yellow ochre, um, and all that. So now I use slightly different flesh tints
Mm.
for my people. That is one color outside of my 12 color paint box that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another is something I'm sure you will know. I'm very bad at color names and all. But yeah, this one I have learnt by heart. It is called burnt sienna. I use it for
Yeah, yeah.
brick, wood, things like that.
Mm.
For my
Brown, yeah.
castle, yeah, for my
Mm.
castle, for Rapunzel, for the castle walls, I use the that color. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, these are mostly the two things that I use outside of that 12 color
Mm-hmm.
paint box. But mostly I try to use um, things within those 12 colors. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Very basic. I keep it very basic as to what color, so that when I'm describing a painting, I'm not, I don't often focus on color. Mostly
Mm.
it's like, I keep telling people, and this is her hand, this is what she's holding, and then I'm like, oh yeah, the thing she's holding is a white cane, so it's, obviously white and red. The color is an afterthought. It's a last
Mm-hmm.
minute thing. And
Okay.
painting my foreground is also, frankly, an afterthought, and something I do last, and something I do only like because I have to.
Uh-huh.
um I don't use, you mentioned dry brush technique and all that.
Mm.
They're just words to me. I don't even know what that looks like on paper. And honestly, sometimes I'm not sure if I would like really want to know. It's not really of interest to me, as
Mm-hmm.
long as it does not affect the way it feels on my fingers. I don't really mind.
It's
So,
interesting, Aishwarya, like, the way we look at colors, the usage of colors. We both are into art, but then the way that we use colors, for me, the most important part is coloring. Of course, the
hmm.
aluminum foil shaping, it takes a lot of time because I have this perfectionist ka keeda. Unless it is of that right shape and all that, I don't know, I'm not satisfied. Then, once I finish the layering the paper, which is not a lot of work. So my favorite part is definitely coloring. I take a lot of time because I have to take out one color, paint it, and then put back the color in its place. So it is time consuming. Um, But then I did have experience teaching artwork to both groups, people who are congenitally blind and as well as who lost their eyesight later in life. It's easier to communicate about colors when your participants are late blind, because they can identify colors, they have some kind of reference when I speak about some color. But when it came to congenitally blind, I was little, I took a lot of time to, of course, they will definitely not understand the color. Okay, red is so and so way, or brown is so and so way. But what I did to make it easier was I made a color reference sheet, Ashwarya. Like example in that sheet, like I've added whatever colors, of elements are there, that I come across. I've added, like example, monsoon sky, it's light and dark gray. Clear sky,
Yeah, I
it's
think I've
light
seen
blue.
your
Yeah. And
reference
yeah.
sheet.
And night sky, it is deep blue, or
Mm,
black. So let's say some person wants to do a rainy day painting, okay, and then they look at these colors and then they know, when, oh, rainy day, monsoon sky, so let me select light gray or dark gray. So then when these people did their painting, what I did was I made them do something that they have reference to, mostly
mm,
not skies, but then something they may have touched, like a flower, like eatable things like donut, a plate, or spoon. So these are the things that they have touched. At least they can focus on shaping them. And then
right.
color, of course, they can look at the color reference sheet and they can paint in. But definitely, for them to understand colors, that would be a challenge. But nevertheless, recently I had a workshop at Devna School for the Blind, and I realized all those kids, they were doing the artwork for the first time. They have never done an artwork, but when they did it, regardless they seen colors or not, they still enjoyed
Exactly.
coloring it and putting their fingers in the colors. And I told them, see, you can use brush if you want to, but I would say the best way of coloring is using your fingers. So that's how I do, because
I paint with
when
my
you
fingers too.
so the best part of painting with your fingers is you can actually touch every part of your artwork. You
Mm,
know where you have to color, where you may have missed the color. So
yeah,
I told them, use your fingers. They're just
yeah.
colors. They're not something toxic and all that. But yeah, they do enjoy. So I like the color thing, in our artworks. And before we close, Ashwarya, so what has been your experience, actually I have a couple of more questions. So one question is, art is always sidelined when it comes to visually impaired,
Right.
what is your take on that, and what do you say people should do to promote accessible art? I mean, where should it start? So what's your take on that?
So, yeah, well, people constantly keep asking me, why, of all things, do you want to take artworks to children? They can do craft, they can do sculpture,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. Um, and, blindness, and then the first recreation that comes to people's mind is singing. But it's not like sighted people have only one or two ways of expressing themselves. I
Mm-hmm.
feel that self expression is important to everyone, and people should have as many ways of expressing themselves as possible so that they can choose what they are most aligned with. They can choose what attracts them the most. They can use their words, they can use their voice, they can use their art, they can use whatever they need to create that change. So I just want to give as many options to children as possible in terms of what they want. It's not like, so I studied in a regular school, and the children in my class used to have art classes. And it is not like all the 30 odd people in my class became famous artists. And
mm,
my art classes weren't about making them famous artists. They just sat and drew flowers and leaves and all kinds of stuff. And nobody said, oh, is this really important?
mm,
Will they
mm,
really use this later in life?
mm,
Very few of them actually did anything to do with art later on. And yet
mm,
they are able to, for example, understand pictures and look at their biology diagrams and say, oh, this is how, this is the picture of a cell, this is what it looks like. And
mm,
they're able to understand the language of lines and shapes. For
mm, mm,
us, what we do to our children, what we do to our blind children is that, until they're, say, in fifth standard, sixth standard, we don't give them any exposure to pictures at all.
mm,
They've been living in this world that's completely 3D. And then suddenly in fifth grade, sixth grade, we're like, oh, here is the picture of your digestive system. Here
mm,
is the picture of parts of a plant.
mm,
Or, this is what the human intestine looks like. Now, how does a child who does not understand the grammar, the semiotics of pictures,
mm,
even, how does that child even grapple with trying to understand this?
mm.
It, it's just a bunch of lines and shapes to them. And most likely
True.
the pictures that are given are, say, line drawings, outline drawings of things. And they just
Mm,
don't understand. Whereas if they'd been exposed to pictures, if they had been um, free to draw their own pictures, they would have understood this better, and
mm,
they would have had they would have been able to use this later in life if they wanted to.
mm.
Plus, frankly, they would have had a fun time. I feel like
Absolutely.
we,
Mm,
we focus so much on educating children who are blind and so less on recreation, even in terms of, the tools that we make so many, everybody nowadays is working on um, new screen reader features, new types of accessible stuff, new types of braille displays, but
mm,
nobody's really working on new types of tennis balls, new types of cricket equipment, or new types of games that children can play, new types of art materials that children can use to create their own art. Because
mm,
all that is seen as secondary in some sense to education. To an extent, I understand that in our country, given our lack of resources and everything, we are still grappling with the idea of education, but I don't think we should grapple with it um, in such a way that, we don't allow children recreation. So that's
mm,
why I
mm,
feel like games and art and things like that are very, very important.
mm,
And art is just, one of the ways that that I'm looking at for self-expression, for just for children to have some fun time
mm.
doing something they like. And even,
Absolutely.
earlier you were talking about color, showing color to congenitally blind versus late blind children.
Mm,
I mostly leave it up to the children. Um, I leave it up to them. If they want to, they can use color. If they don't, and I've
mm,
seen children who've taken both the ways.
mm,
One girl, she was congenitally blind. If she was late blind, she probably wouldn't have done that because the picture in her mind would have had color in it, so she might not have been satisfied without color. But one congenitally blind girl told me, when I was like passing around colors and stuff, and I asked her, do you want some? And she was like, no, I'm busy making this, I don't think I'll have time.
mm. Wow, an artist in making. Oh, wow.
Because
Thanks, sir.
she was still,
Mm-hmm.
sticking, that was also figures, like we were doing figures of people, we
Mm-hmm.
were giving them jewelry, like we were
Mm-hmm.
putting jewelry on people, on figures of people and all that. So she was
Mm-hmm.
like, she told me what color cloth and what color jewelry she wanted, but she
Mm-hmm.
chose to leave the face and hands and everything black. We were using M seal that day.
Oh, wow.
So when we mixed up M seal, it was black, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
shades of gray and black, actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So she chose to leave it that way. Actually, many of them there chose to leave it that way, partly because
Mm-hmm.
of a lack of time, and partly
Mm-hmm.
because they were having such fun matching the textures and the beads, and they were having such fun in that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like painting was something they wanted to do. So I
Yeah, yeah.
usually, and some, I have seen others also, especially, I've seen some children, especially really younger children, they like this idea of dipping their hands in paint and smearing it everywhere, and that that
Forget
that
about children, Aishwarya. Sometimes even I do that. my ask my the maid at my house. She'll always, ये आपके कपड़ों के ऊपर हमेशा क्यों कलर रहता है? So yeah.
Yeah, I don't I guess I don't have that gene in me.
You know what, Aishwarya? I would really one day, I'm telling you this, one day I would really want to do a project with you together. It could
It'll
be a
be
small
awesome.
one, and
Yeah.
but I'd really want to do a project with you. And on
You're
that note,
coming to
I'm gonna,
Bangalore.
yeah, I am next week. I am leaving to Bangalore this tomorrow morning, so I'll be seeing you there next week. But before we close off, I wanted to ask you, what is your next project, or if a dream project, or anything that you want to share about your next project in regard to art?
What I actually want to do, so now what I'm focusing on is to understand the grammar of tactile art. So, in
Mm,
the sense that if we don't tell children that this is how you depict certain things,
mm,
because, especially congenitally blind children have never seen pictures. So they depict things in whatever feels natural, whatever way, whatever method that feels natural to them, right?
mm,
So I make a note of, I try to understand that in in detail, to understand what are the different ways that they depict things, what is the kind of grammar that is there for tactile art, and
mm,
why is it and why should it be different from visual art, in the sense
mm,
that um, the textures thing is very different. How
mm.
you depict background and foreground in tactile art is very different. So I look at all that. My next thing, hopefully, is to try to create some kind of tools for creating tactile art, things which are, um, which, something that people can just pick up and start making.
Mm,
Because a
mm,
lot of the kind of artwork that we are talking about, that we've been talking about throughout this talk, are very material intensive, time intensive, and they need a surface, they need a proper, it has to be a proper art thing, an art
mm.
project. Um, And my art desk is like super messy. You can ask anybody in Triple IT. In fact, I can show you when you
I'm
come to
gonna come and
Bangalore.
see that next week.
It's like the messiest place imaginable. It has things everywhere. And you know, this is like in the middle of like a bunch of people doing their programming things on their computers, and people are like, every time I come to your place, there's some new bit of color. So, yeah, but how can someone just pick up something and draw? What kind of tools are really required
Mm.
so that, people will be able to draw what they need without so much hassle. So
Beautiful.
the tools bit is my next project, hopefully. That's like
Beautiful,
my dream
Aishwarya.
project.
Beautiful. That I'm looking forward to it because it's like you're contributing to, if people may not be accepting it right away, but I'm sure the ideas that you have, the suggestions, the recommendations, I'm sure people will adapt it later on while creating art. And good luck with that. And I just want to share also the next project what I have in pipeline. I have two things. One is to because I've been working on 3D models.
Mm-hmm.
My dream has been, because I created a Titanic ship that took me almost 6 months to create it.
Mm.
And if anyone wants to see Titanic ship, it's there at LV Prasad Eye Institute where I was working. It's almost 2 feet long, so you all can check it out. This, but my next project is to create a Colosseum in its original structure,
Mm.
not the destroyed one. Because I'd want to, in fact, I had this in mind that I need to create all the seven wonders in 3D model, but
That
I
would be
could start
wonderful.
off with Colosseum. And my second project is, I'm a horror buff, Aishwarya, so I want to create a face of a vampire with open mouth and the fangs,
Fangs.
yeah, 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 yeah. So,
I do have one final question for you.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, coming out of what we were talking about. So, um, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but in a lot of the projects that you've been sharing, and even what you've wanted to create,
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of it has been about, um, like things that are maybe scenery, maybe structures,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like maybe bringing things to people, like blind people who can't actually go
Yeah,
and
yeah,
touch buildings or touch the Whomping Willow or
yeah. That's
things
the
like that.
vampire.
Yeah, I feel like that part is very important to you, is it?
Yeah, absolutely, Aishwarya. Because um, I could say that with the pyramid and Titanic,
Mm,
pyramids are talked about monuments. But how does a pyramid look? So the pyramid I did is, in height, it is 1.5 feet.
mhm,
It's on a canvas board, but of course it's standing on a canvas board.
mhm,
And
mm,
then there are entrances in the front and the back entrance, and each block of pyramid also can be touched. The
mm,
steps, from
mm,
bottom to top, and each part can be touched. And imagine how beautiful it would be. This,
mhm,
we I usually have audio description through Spacefelt, so when they scan it, they get audio description saying, saying that one block in a pyramid actually weighs like 1.5 tons. So
mhm,
that expands the imagination. Oh, I can imagine how big a pyramid is. And then to make it more cute, what I've done is tiny little two camels. One camel is standing and one
mm,
camel is sitting. So, and there's, of course, I put the sand texture around the pyramid to depict the desert. So, yeah, I have that thing, like what I have seen and what people have
mm.
not. I want to bring it to them. So that is what I have in mind. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
also, I think, one of the big differences beyond the color and stuff in the way we view art and our motivations, I suppose.
Mm, mm, mm,
Um, because I haven't seen these either. If I was asked to draw a pyramid, I can only do a basic, slightly triangular, but in that shape. I can do the
mm,
shape,
mm,
that's all.
mm,
So,
mm,
um, for me, I think art is more about, I mean, for in my art practice, it is more about experiences, more about slightly more symbolic things.
mm,
Um, So it's more like, my experiences as a woman with a disability, sort of translating that into
Hmm.
tactile. Even the Rapunzel was disabled. So it was an imagining of it was a kind of an imagining of Rapunzel if she was disabled. So um earlier Rapunzel had um her the she was imprisoned on top of the castle by the witch. But
Hmm.
now there are no witches and all our castles have lifts, but still Rapunzel is on top and alone and isolated. Why is that?
Ah,
So that
ouch.
that that's 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 what I was trying to look at. And each of the floors of my castle had like words written on it. One was community, which
Hmm.
is both a plus and a negative in this sense.
Hmm.
Um, because what will people say is one reason why any disabled Rapunzel is inside her home. Um, and learned helplessness was another thing that I had written on. So each
Hmm.
floor of the castle had like words on it that
Beautiful.
showed
I
why.
like the messages you bring in through your art, they're very beautiful.
And I like
Yeah.
your backgrounds.
Yeah.
Maybe because of the way it's described, I've seen only some of your art, but I've read descriptions of all. So
Hmm.
I like how detailed your background is. Um,
Ah. Thanks, Aishwarya. Thank you so much. And I think we can, if you talk about art, we can just go on and on and on and on. But and it's been great being here with you. And I'm happy that we were able to finally do this talk show and
I
tell the
know
whole
we've been
world
talking
that
about,
we are two Aishwaryas. We are not the same. So yes. So thank you so
and we
much.
also
And
look so different. And I thought sighted people were supposed to like see and understand that that facial features are different and stuff, but maybe they're not.
yeah.
So
But it's been a
yeah,
beautiful experience talking to you, Aishwarya. All the
same here.
best with your
Thanks for
art.
having me. Thanks for talking with me.
My
It was
pleasure.
awesome.
My pleasure. Yeah. My pleasure. And I'm going to check out your artworks when I'm going to come there to Bangalore next week.
Oh, there are very few here, but you're welcome to check out what is here.
Thank you so much. And to the viewers, so this is Aishwarya,
And
Aishwarya
Ashwarya.
TV. Yeah, Aishwarya and Aishwarya. You better tell them your surname, Aishwarya,
No,
otherwise.
it's gonna be like this is Aishwarya and Aishwarya signing off.
Aishwarya and Aishwarya signing off from Insights, which is brought to you by Grailmaker Innovations. Thank you for watching this video, and we're going to come up with many more such videos. If you want to reach out to us or talk to us, our number is 8520818879. We'll also leave it in the description. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.